So, Ryan, thanks for taking time and sitting down with me today. I always love the opportunity to sit down and have discussions with our current parents who are also alumni. And I've got to imagine that may feel a little bit strange to hear that you are a parent and you're an alumni.
It's very surreal. It really is.
And even for us too, when I think about your family, your mom was a teacher here, and when I first started teaching, before I was an administrator, we taught together. We taught middle school students, and then your brother Danny was in my very first class of 8th graders that I taught here, and so it just is such an awesome thing when I think about just even your family in general and the legacy that's here. And with that, one of the things I was thinking about in just getting started is I'm sure there'll be people who will watch this that you would have gone to school with. Some of them maybe you've stayed connected to, some of them maybe you haven't, but that would just be really excited to hear since time that we had together as students, what has Ryan Young done? And so, I know from BG Christian, we didn't have a high school at the time, and you moved on to public high school, right? But then after graduating high school, what did you do? And how did that course bring you back to here you are still in, Northwest Ohio and here with your kids?
Yeah, it is awesome, and it's cool coming here. And like you mentioned, the other folks that I run into and see, that's one of my favorite things when you guys do events. It's like a reunion because I get to see people that I went to school with, and now their children are here, and being able to see them grow, and that is really cool. But yeah, I ended up graduating from Elmwood, because you guys didn't have the high school. I always had dreams of joining the Navy anyway, so I did join the Navy. But I was also, funny enough, working at the mattress store as a delivery guy.
Oh, wow.
So, and Craig, I learned everything from him about mattresses and everything. And, it's kind of a silly thing to be into, mattresses, but they're easy. I get to lay around all day. It's not too bad of a gig. But then I also had the Navy, which is just the funniest dichotomy ever. Because, I was a weapons instructor, and, I did, small boat operations and stuff, and I loved it. I got to travel the world and see many things, but it was always really funny because they knew I was a reservist.
Right.
And so I'd be on the gun range, kitted up, yelling at the people keep their eyes down range because safety, And once we got done, they'd be like, "So, what do you do civilian? We know you're a reservist," thinking I'm going to say cop or something. I sell mattresses. Now keep your eyes down range. It's just a funny dichotomy that I always enjoyed.
That's funny.
So, and then but I did a bunch of active duty time, and we were in Connecticut, and I was all gung-ho. We were on a every other year deployment schedule. Mm-hmm. So I was in the Middle East and then come home. Craig always had a spot for me, and then orders popped up where I could do 3 years in Groton, Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to move out my wife, Mandy, and so she came out to Connecticut, and it was funny. Nobody likes Groton in the Navy because they got this... rotten Groton is what they call it. But my dad was in the Navy, and he was stationed in Groton, where he met my mother. And so my older sister, Kimmy, was born in Groton, Connecticut.
That's amazing.
So we had family out there. In the summers, I got to go and visit Groton, Connecticut. So when the orders popped up, I was like, I want to go. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I get to hang out with my grandpa, my aunts and uncles that I don't get to see but in the summers.
Right.
So it worked out really good. But then... we had, I got her pregnant, we ended up having our first child, coincidentally enough, was born in Groton, Connecticut.
Okay.
The same place my older sister was, which was really kind of cool. But once I had, and it's so funny how history repeats itself, once I had Cameron, the same thing that I used to call my dad silly for doing, because my dad got out of the Navy when he had Kimmy.
Right.
I did the same darn thing. I stayed in the reserve, so I'm still in the reserve, but I'm not on that deployment schedule anymore. I was like, we need to get home. Mandy wanted more support and everything. I mean, we had it out in Groton, but it was just, it's tough being far away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I said, go back home and let's just find a cheap starter home, just get us started. And so she went home basically, got us a home and in Maumee at first.
Okay.
But Cam was still really young, so school wasn't even in our minds at all. So we were mommy and then running the mattress store for Craig while he was semi-retired, and then finally moved to Perrysburg, and that's how we ended up back in the Bowling Green area. So we're strong family oriented anyway. So it was kind of an easy choice. We knew we'd be coming back here eventually.
Yeah. When a lot of people, knowing your family, like the connection between your dad and his service, and he was on submarines, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's why he's so kooky. Who wants to go underwater for 6 months?
But really, anybody in the area who might know who your dad is, your dad was Professor Tinker, and that brings into even what you're doing right now. Tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yeah, so I was at the mattress store, and my dad was selling stuff on eBay, and eBay, oh my goodness, they're a racket there, and he was complaining at dinner one night, and I just was like, well, I know how to do some stuff on the internet, so I was like, well, he had a YouTube channel, 1,000 subscribers. I said, I think we could build that up, and I can make a website. Yeah. So I basically partnered with him, made a website, and quadrupled his business in a year.
That's crazy.
Just going from eBay to and it kind of was his dream anyway. He loves toys, and I was happy to help and work with him, because then more family, like we were saying, family oriented. So dream come true. I get to work with him all the time, as much as we bicker about it, but that's the joy of stuff, I suppose.
Sure.
And so now we've got that toy shop ripping and roaring, and then my brother. He actually, because I took over the mattress store, so now we're down hands, and so he was able to come aboard. So now I'm literally working with my dad and my brother, and then I've got my little brother as my delivery guy at the mattress store. So we're fully family oriented. It's really kind of cool.
So you're working with Danny and with Lincoln?
Well, no, Lincoln's still up north.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, so it's Mark.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
So he's the oldest of the adopted four that we have.
And in my mind, I'm like, when I think of the younger 4 kids, I don't think of them as being old enough to be adults yet.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Here we are. And
time flies. Can you believe we're going to be writing 2025?
That's crazy.
Oh, it's nuts.
Man. So now, with your family, for those who don't know, you mentioned your son Cameron, but tell us your kids' names and what grades they're in this year at the academy.
Boy, we've got Cameron, who's 10, and he is in 3rd grade.
Okay.
We got Mason, who is 7 in 2nd grade, so right next to each other, which is good. And then Riley, who is 4, and she's in the pre-K program. And then we have Lane, who's coming. He's 2, so he'll be up in here soon, which I'm a little nervous about that one. We've got Cameron, who's is a sweetheart, social butterfly.
Yes.
And then Mason, who's a little more reserved, and then Riley, who's another social butterfly, and then Mason, I'm a little afraid of. I'll be getting calls from him, and you'll be like, "Man, what changed?" Because he seems like a little pistol, not bad, but just a pistol.
That's funny.
And then we have Kimber, who's on the way. She's only 7 months, though, so we've got. Did I get them all?
I think you did. Yeah, I think you did. Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's just the start, We'll see how many we can get, but it's going great, and they love coming here. My goodness, Cameron, Mason, Riley, she gets upset whenever mom has to take the boys to school and she doesn't get dropped off.
She doesn't get to go. Yeah, so she's looking forward to it. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, one of the things in preparation for sitting down together, we asked you to think a little bit about was like your time here, and what grade did you start in? Like, did you start out right out the bat in kindergarten? And what are some of your earliest memories from your time starting at Bowling Green Christian Academy?
And that's what's crazy, because I did start in kindergarten with Mrs. Harold, and then Amy was in the class. And it was funny because Mrs. Harold was here one day when Cameron was in kindergarten. Yeah. And she substituted. And she
still does. Mrs. Harold is still on our sub list and subs pretty regularly.
And it was funny because Cameron, he looks kind of like me. So she actually came out to tell my wife when Mandy picked him up. I'm so sorry, I was calling him Ryan all day. So it's got to be surreal for her, too, to see, me as a kid and then Now, as having a kid the same age, it's kind of surreal. And yeah, I know I have the best memories, and now I get them even more, like flashbacks when I'm here. You know, I drop the kids off, we come in for parent teacher, and I'm like getting these flashbacks. Oh my goodness, I was over here fooling around with Kristen and Amy, you know, or Catherine was over here. You know, it's just all the memories flood back. And in kindergarten, I still think about it to this day. One of my favorite little field trips, is you could call it that. Mrs. Harold took us down to her house. She lived right on the corner there. Right. And we picked apples and cut them up and was snacking on apples. I just thought that was fun. Mrs. Harold had it all organized and planned out what we were doing, and I just, to this day, still remember it, you know. And
it's funny that you mentioned picking apples, because even though they've moved in the years since then, the house that they have in Bowling Green now, they still have apple trees, because that's like such a big thing. And like one of the things that Mrs. Harold is still known by for anybody here is making apple pies.
Yeah.
So she cool. Like I feel like there is not a Friday that goes by that there is not some random treat that was baked that's sitting in the kitchen for the staff that's from Mrs. Harold.
Oh, that's too awesome.
I know, isn't it crazy? I just love it. I love her. Well, for you with that, when you think about Mrs. Harold or others, you know, could you share a little bit about, you know, all the way from, because you were here all the way through 8th grade, right? Mm-hmm. You know, who were some of those teachers that really had an impact on you? And, you know, what are some of the things that, you know, when you think about them and how that has, you know, impacted your journey and your life that really made a difference for you?
Yeah, there's fond memories of all this teacher. I mean, honest to goodness, it was and I was a lot younger then, so it is kind of funny trying to think back to those moments. I mean, one funny one was, you know, I got when I was in kindergarten, we had going into 1st grade, and you know how kids chatter, and so I was getting Mrs. Stutes next, and I don't know if you've heard.
I remember Mrs. Stutes.
There was always that rumor that she was rather strict, and so I was not a rambunctious, but you know, kind of off the wall kid, you know, a little bit of a goofball. So I was very nervous about going into 1st grade. But it was pleasant. I mean, Mrs. Stutes I'd still talk to this day, which is really awesome. A real sweetheart and everything, but it's just so funny coming over that hurdle. You're like, oh no, I'm coming in 1st grade. There's all these rumors. I'm going to get in so much trouble, but it was a great experience, you know. And then I got the pleasure of having her in 3rd grade too, which is really, really cool. But all the teachers really were great. I mean, Mrs. Henry, I always kind of talk about her because her and my mom were friends, and then she had a son, Mac Henry, and he was just a grade below me, and so we would hang out after school. You know, but we're just kind of messing around while our mothers were getting ready to go. And but Mrs. Henry always had a really calm, cool attitude, but very strict, you know, but very chill, where you were able to enjoy yourself as long as you were behaving. And so gym class was always one of my favorites, because she always made it fun no matter what, and she was able to handle, you know, us rambunctious boys. Yeah,
Mrs. Mrs. Henry was still here for a couple of years when I started teaching and doing very similar stuff. She did some intervention work with students and was our gym teacher. And I agree with you. One of the things that when I think about Becky Henry is she just had such a unique way of relating to students, and especially was really being somebody that was working in intervention and would work, you know, outside of, you know, having a big class in gym or whatever, but, you know, working with kids one-on-one. Like, she just could build relationships so easily, because she was such, she's one of those people I think of, like, just such a bright, like an intelligent person, like very smart, but just like witty and funny. And so like how she, you know, connected with people. So knowing you now as an adult, it does not surprise me that Mrs. Henry would be one of your favorite teachers.
Well, Jack, even just sitting, you know, it's so funny you get because you're talking about the intervention. So I had that where, I can't remember what grade, obviously, but I know it was upstairs, right by our time was the kindergarten class. All by the line, you know, by the stairs, the other stairs. So in that closet we used to go, and Mrs. Henry brought me in there, and it's so funny because I have flashbacks of like me trying to teach Cameron. He'll make the same mistakes I made when I was that age. And it's so funny because I just remember Mrs. Henry would be over the shoulder doing what I do now to my children and like fixing the words that I might mispronounce or have trouble sounding out. Yeah. And I just think like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned, because that was one of those times, like, we've, since then, we've been blessed that we've expanded to 2 campuses, which helped us with space, and now we're getting into a season where we are full at both campuses and are looking to the future, but that was a time period in particular that what you're talking about is that, it's now, right now, it's primarily the gym storage closet, but we were so full in those early years before we expanded to the upper campus that Mrs. Henry had a desk set up in that closet room and worked with students there. And actually, Mrs. Malanga, who Margaret, obviously, she also, after Becky had moved on and she started teaching for us at that time, she used that space and worked with students for a while. So it's...
Which, Mrs. Daly, I gotta give her a shout out too as the art teacher. She was my favorite art teacher for sure. Hands down.
Yep. Actually, she actually just did a chapel for us recently and was sharing both like about how the school got started, because obviously it's our 40th anniversary, and so that's been a big focus and push, and is not the only reason, but a primary reason that we're wanting to sit down with people like you who are have a history with the school and are connected to the school and just share and celebrate that. But she shared some pictures from the past and then was just talking about different things. And actually, she had a letter that she got from Peter Manto, who was our first principal, who would have been long before even you, but and that was really cool to see, and just that generational impact with the students. So, with that, how would you say, Ryan, like when you think about your time here at BG Christian, how would you say it prepared you, for, your, not only just like your current career and what you do, but how did it prepare you, like, and shape like your character and your worldview and your principles?
And I think that's probably the best part, because it's difficult, when you get out to the real world. Right. It's not easy at all, and I don't have a perfect past, obviously, but I was much better due to my foundation and faith, just my knowledge base and comfort in knowing the Word and faith and God in my heart, which that foundation came from this school, and like I say, although not perfect, but it definitely helped. I mean, I see the dichotomy between when I was going here and then I go to public school for high school. Yeah. My first day was almost traumatizing in a sense, where I'm at this school, I have no idea what's going on. All of these kids are just cussing everywhere. I hadn't heard a swear word. Like, I wouldn't even think of swearing at that age because I was so not petrified, but
it was ingrained in you. Don't do that.
You do not say these words at all. There's no reason. And so that was my belief, and now I'm surrounded by all these kids who sound like sailors. Later in my life I learned,
well, at least that prepared you in advance for the Navy, right?
Yeah, so I'm in lunch, I'm at this school, I don't know where I'm going and nothing. I'm in lunch line, and these random kid comes up, pushes me out of the way, starts cussing about the line, and I'm just like, wow, I do. And just looking back at that now, having children, it's night and day. Yeah. I'd rather my kids be in an environment like this where, of course you're going to have your differences, you're going to have your issues, but it's at least faith-based. It's got something that has principle, as opposed to just the Wally world, just made-up culture that we're running into now. So I think that just having that strong basis set me up to be more prepared in the future, to be able to guide other folks, to lead, and have something to lean back on when I'm in a bad spot. So that couldn't have been provided without this, I believe.
Yeah. For you and Mandy then, when it was coming time, for Cameron to start school and looking forward, what was that process like for you, looking at, okay, do we do public school, do we do private school, and ultimately how did you make the decision to come back to BG Christian with your kids?
And really, it was BG Christian. We really thought wasn't even an option, to be honest. We just weren't. We were afraid we weren't going to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
Honest to goodness, that was the number one thing. So it wasn't on the table.
Yeah.
And when we were in Perrysburg, they're
Yeah.
famed for having the best schools in the world, which I think is overrated now after looking back and joining different parent groups about school, because when we were bringing Cameron in, it was during that time of COVID.
Right.
And a lot of the public schools, I mean, in my opinion, not everybody's, I believe what they did to children where it was child abuse. And when I saw that happening, we were literally 3 days in, and they were starting to implement controls that I thought were child abuse. And my child never suffered from any of those abuses. I immediately pulled my children out. Actually, I believe Mason was in preschool.
Yeah.
And then pulled Cameron out, and we were immediately like, okay, what are we going to do now? Cameron,
Right.
has got to learn to read. We got to do all this stuff, and I love my children, and I'm not opposed to homeschooling. So we kind of did the Ohio Virtual Academy, which is a fine program for those who can do it. But I might be a Navy instructor where I can teach people how to shoot weapons. But those are adults. I cannot teach a child how to read.
Not your gifting.
That was not my gift, and I tried. But it just, we realized very quickly that this online schooling wasn't going to be a good option for us personally.
Yeah.
It can be good for others, but for us it just wasn't. Cameron, he's a social butterfly, and I believe a social learner. And so we knew we needed to find something, and I always, had fond memories of BG Christian.
Yeah.
And so we had to explore options, and I told my wife, so God bless my wife, because she really did all the legwork. And she found out, about the Ed Choice, about the different programs that they have to be able to make it so you can make it an affordable and an option for everybody, really, I believe now.
Absolutely.
And so without that, we would have never been able to, and it was a no-brainer once we knew it was an option, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Once you knew there was not the financial barrier, that you could do it, it was immediately what you would want to have for your kids.
Exactly.
And what is that been like since, like, when you're interacting with your kids when they're coming home, or even just when you guys are here, you and Mandy are very involved. I see you guys at you're picking kids up, dropping them off, coming to programs and stuff. Like, what have you heard from your kids, and what have you seen in their experience that would be the kinds of things that you would want other people to know, like, this is why we send our kids to BG Christian?
Yeah, the community, is the biggest thing. You have to surround yourself with people who are really like-minded, otherwise you'll get just dragged down, honestly. And it's cool to see. I when Cameron went into first grade or second, I can't remember now.
Yeah, I think it was
Jenkins.
I think he was in first grade. Yeah,
first grade.
Yep.
So first grade, it was always fun because I could tell Cameron, I went to school with your teacher, so you better watch it and listen to her, which was just awesome. And then obviously with Greg too, I know Greg and
Greg Jenkins
and Bethany. So just knowing both of them, and then knowing that she's helping teach, Cameron was just awesome. Just being able to see people I went to school with, and now they have their own children. It's really cool. That's my favorite. That's why I always do look forward to coming to any BG Christian Academy event. Is I get to see folks I haven't seen in a long time, and the children, they do love it. It's a good, wholesome atmosphere. Just the stuff that Cameron, Mason, they come home. It's all very good, innocent stuff, that's what you want. You want it to just be silly stuff, books. Oh, I found this book, and Cameron loves going to the library, obviously, and I remember going to the library too with Mrs. Winslow, and she would show me the books and how to find stuff, and I just thought that was kind of cool. Now he's experienced the same thing, and then Mason loves the playground, obviously.
Well, yeah, of course.
Jumping off of high things. So just the atmosphere is so good. That's why it's so important to send like-minded people to the school. It's just not like we were going back to. Once I knew it was an option, it was the only option.
That's awesome. We talk a lot about, our mission, and you kind of, touched on that a little bit. Like, we want to partner, with Christian families in the discipleship of their children, and we want to do that through providing that high quality, education. What would you say has been your and Mandy's experience in terms of what you see both in like the academics and the curriculum, that your children are doing, and in, what they're getting spiritually, whether it's in things they're talking about they learned from chapel or Bible classes. What are your interactions and your observations, about that in terms of your experience as a parent at the school?
Which that is one of the cool things that I have been able to experience, because we'll do our Bible studies, and I try to teach the children, because I've got opinions about all of the Bible. I've been I'm probably the most well versed in my family, because my wife grew up in public school.
Sure.
Well, me, I got to have the experience of BG Christian Academy at a younger age, so I was able to have that base, which I have a very strong base of that. But trying to instill it into my children was very, very difficult, and just their lack of understanding, because I just didn't have the time to be able to dedicate to them to growing and learning as well as I knew it. And so now it's really fun, because even at the dinner table, they'll say something silly, but it's so cute, just having your 4-year-old daughter, she'll look up and say, Jesus died for her sins, like out of nowhere. But it's she's starting to get the concept. She has no idea what she's talking about now, but she has introduction to it.
Right.
And that's how you build the base to really better understanding. Is just getting that baseline. First, you got to know the characters, then you got to know the purpose of the characters, and then the stories. It's just one step at a time, and they're starting to get that step now, which is huge. Even with the older ones, now they're having a better understanding. You can actually have a little bit better conversations with them even, and they can come to me and ask questions, and they've been doing that, which is kind of fun too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
A little bit different perspective. So instead of me forcing it down their throats, they're coming to me now instead, which that's a big change.
Right, it's happening as a part of natural conversations and dynamics that you're having with them. And I couldn't agree more. When I think about, I have because I think Riley's in the 4-year-olds class, right? And my daughter is right behind her. Izzy is in our 3-year-olds class. And it's even just for her, very little, same kind of things. When she comes home, they're imagining, or they're playing, and they're talking about things they're hearing in their everyday day. Mm-hmm. And so when she, she volunteered my 3-year-old to like pray for dinner yesterday when we sat down for family dinner, like even when she's pretending and playing, like you'll hear her talking about something like, okay, well, Jesus says, or we should, and sometimes it's silly things like, I'm not sure what you're saying Jesus says, but that's what's in her mind, or even just conversations with my older two, that I've had like that, where it just is when I'm talking to them about their day, their relationship with God is something that is at the forefront of that we can interact on, and it has a place and a meaning for them that's just different. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. For you, when you think about even though Ed Choice is there, it's a sacrifice. There's still money that you have to pay out of pocket, but we also have some really generous donors who support us both through our annual fund to provide opportunities for us to further what we do, and also who even give in scholarship. And so when you think about those donors who support our school, and help to make what we do possible and that mission possible, what would you want them to know about the impact that the money that they're giving to the school is having on kids?
Yeah, and it's like I said, that was what we thought the barrier was. So without the donors, one wise person always said, you have to support what you love. Otherwise it just goes away. And for folks like myself who, we're not in that position financially right now in our lives, for other folks who are in that position to be able to help us means a lot to us. I mean, it's like I mentioned earlier, it's a dream come true that my children are here where I went, and now they're going to be able to go all the way through high school, so they won't have to be traumatized if they had to transition to a public school, you know. So that without the donors, it wouldn't be possible, and it also helps inspire folks like myself who were able to benefit from the donors and help to eventually have a goal of being there in that position as well. You know, that's a big thing, because you always want to kind of help wherever you've been helped. You want to always be able to give back.
Yeah, generosity inspires generosity. And so
Absolutely.
I love what you're saying about how, you know, in being a good steward of what you have, when you look at it and say, hey, like I'm itching for the day when I can give back in the way that they are. That's
exactly
an amazing thing. So what do you think? If we were sitting down with Cameron or Mason or Riley and we asked them, like, what's their favorite thing about BG Christian, what do you think they would say?
So, like I did mention a little earlier, but Cameron loves the library. That's his favorite thing. Library, he loves to get joke books and different books about dinosaurs. If there's one about Godzilla, he obviously
he's there. He's into it.
Which he's made leaps and bounds in reading, because I try to read a lot with them because I like to read. So I try to force that on them, but they're starting to find books that they like and then just do it themselves, which is really, really good. Yeah. Mason, of course, gym class. I mean, he is just animal when it comes to he loves Gaga Ball. I hear about it all the time. Obviously, just playing. I mean, he's such an active kid. That one's a tough one. But, you know, even the everyday school life, you hear different stories that they enjoy. And then Riley, she can't stop playing kitchen. So she loves that little kitchen thing. But then just seeing her friends, you hear come home and, oh, Gracie. I hear about Gracie all the time, even though I hear they're not exactly in the same class anymore. But still that's all she just talks about.
Yeah, those friends and that impact in the community, and it's such a different thing when I think about, you know, any of those environments, whether it's like you said, like, you know, your kid loving the library or playing out on the playground recess time or whatever those things would be. Knowing too, like, there are other families who are in that same partnership with the school, that we're praying for the same things. Our goals are the same things, like, you know, and to see our kids interacting through that is such a cool thing. Such a cool thing. So for you, Ryan, you know, kind of in closing out our time a little bit, you know, what advice would you give to a prospective family who's weighing their options? Is Christian education worth it? And is it accessible to me? Like, what would you want those prospective families to know?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, I'm case in point right here. You know, thinking it wasn't an option, and then finding out that it is an option, and here's why, here's the programs, and then the help. I mean, I didn't do the work the wife did. Yeah. But talking to her, she told me how much help the administration was. I mean, it was. Sure.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, no, really. She was, I had trouble with this. I emailed, got right back to me, this is the answer, easy. And so all it is taking that first step, filling out the paperwork, getting it done, and getting enrolled. I don't know what the process is for how long, if there's a wait line or any of that, but it's worth it. It's just, my wife went to public school. I went to Christian and then public, and listening to her stories of her childhood and some of the experiences she had to deal with while I was here in that age group, and I didn't have any of those issues she ran into. Yeah. And then going into high school, public school, and seeing the dichotomy between Christian school and public school, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's just, gosh, you just don't know how other parents raise their children, what they believe, what their ideology is. And nowadays, when we live in the literal culture war, I just feel like these poor children are kind of getting taken advantage of and abused personally. I mean, it just was, it's just a blessing to be here and not have to put my children through that struggle somewhere else.
Yeah. It's such, like you said, it's so there's so many wonderful things that have come with innovation and society, and yet there are also so many challenges that make it so hard, and perspectives and shifting ideologies and things that even, when you were a student weren't there. And I can't imagine, even when I think about my own family, like trying to navigate that, especially with the, not only the things I saw with my kids in elementary, things that were coming their way or questions that they would get asked, right? But even my older two, my teenagers right now, like I can't imagine going through, with my 13-year-old and my 14-year-old without the support of the school and the basis that's given them and the foundation and those things. And so, it's so meaningful to us. One, I love hearing, obviously, as an administrator, that from your earliest experience, even from Andy, right, who other than knowing you went to the school, probably didn't know much about the school, right, to say, yes, this was such a great experience, or like this was so easy, or like she felt helped, supported. Like I love hearing that. And then two, but it's it's such an honor when our alumni choose to bring their kids here, and it blows my mind. I had an experience because Cameron's in 3rd grade, right? So I was looking around the 3rd grade classroom in August when the year was starting, and I just was like surveying the names on the desks, and I was like, there are 3 kids in this room who I taught their parents, and that doesn't even include Cameron, because you were already, when I came here, you were already probably close to the end of high school or out of high school, but yeah, there were 3 kids in that class alone that I taught their parents. And
that's cool.
So for us, there's no greater honor than when our alumni say, I want my kids to have the experience that I have, and that you come and see who we are and where we are now and say yes to that. So thank you for your partnership with us and trusting your kids with us. Our goal with that, like, we want to prepare them to go, out into the world. Hopefully we can do it without the early Navy prep course you were talking about. But yeah, we're just so thankful for you. So thanks, Ryan, for sitting down, for sharing, and just being a part of celebrating 40 years of Christian education with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you.